great men have done probably more damage to the world than good. I mean, if I look around the world at present, I don't see too many women causing real damage to it. They used to say of Indira Gandhi that she was the only man in the cabinet. I thought the world was in a better place when we had people like Angela Merkel and Jacinda Ardern and others playing key roles of leading countries. What we have set right is that now half of all our graduate trainee engineers are women. It's going to take a long time before it shows up in the leadership team and in the management team, but it will. If we don't recruit managers from women in India, you're automatically halving your recruitment pool. The word that I believe is greatly unappreciated in all descriptions of leadership is the word authenticity. You have someone who will praise the government on a stage and criticize it personally. I lose trust in that person.
So if you look at privileged India, they just want to go abroad.
And I think we're too big a country to rely on imported talent. As a result of the reform program, the Indian economy started to create not only greater outcomes in terms of growth rates and everything else, but greater opportunities for people in general.
A lot of Gen Zs actually will not be able to identify with it.
No, because they didn't experience.
They didn't experience it. They didn't see the fact that there were only two cars in India. Even getting a slice of cheese was something. Oh wow, there's some cheese here now.
By and large, things are getting better, and we have decades to run of things getting better. And so we should have that confidence in the future. Where does our potential come from? It comes from our aspiration. It comes from the population that we have, which I've always believed is a huge asset. It's also a population that is inadequately educated, earlier in quantity terms, now in quality terms. Some people will be, hey, listen, really driven, and I'm going to make this company go places, and I really want to achieve a lot. And you have other people who will want to do a really good job, but they have other things in their life that they wish to also do.
Welcome to yet another episode of Lead Inc. Inc, as we know, stands for Incorporated, but Inc for us stands for inclusion. In this series, we've been including leaders who have nurtured for the future. Today, we have someone who has presented at so many conferences, given so many interviews, but has never ever spoken about himself or even his leadership style, because he's only spoken about nurturing the country we love and call India. I'm very, very proud and privileged to have with us today Dr. Naushad Forbes, co-chairman of Forbes Marshall. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Manjiri. Thank you. That was a very generous introduction.
And very different, right? Because usually people plunge into questions about what do you think India should do and what should we do next and what about the budget and all of that. But today we're going to talk not just the future for India, but a little more about what leadership means to you. So that's the first question. If you were to define leadership, long answer, short answer, in whichever form, what does leadership mean to you?
So I think for me, leadership, the word that I believe is greatly unappreciated in all descriptions of leadership is the word authenticity. You need to see what you get. And I worry very much when you hear someone saying something on a stage and then you talk to them privately on the side and what they say to you is quite different. You have someone who will praise the government on a stage and criticize it personally. I lose trust in that person. And I think leadership is about being authentic and being truthful and about expecting others to do what you are and not what you say. So it's, I think, about expecting, I have no illusions that, I am in any way an example of what I would call a perfect leader. I have many that I look up to who represent perfection in particular aspects of leadership. I don't expect the people that I look up to be perfect human beings in every way. I think we're all flawed. I think we all have strengths and we all have challenges. And I want to come across as being equally flawed, and hope that people will learn from me the things that they should and are useful, but I don't particularly want to tell them what they should learn from me. That's for them to decide.
That's a wonderful answer, and a different answer, let me tell you, because we've asked a lot of leaders and some have said responsibility, others have said what they've said. But everything you do is rooted, I know, in theory, because you are an extremely intellectual leader, intellectual person with all not just your doctorate, but you like theory. Right? Which is why
I do like theory.
Yes, you like theory. So I'm going to take you to the history of leadership theories, which I've been studying recently, and right from the great man theory to all this Napoleon and the strong man to going through everything that happened to today where we are talking about compassionate leadership, we're talking about situational leadership, we're talking about servant leadership, and the whole evolution really as such. But nowhere has your definition of authenticity really come through, because every theory is asking the leader to be something or someone else. So I'd just love to know your take on this.
So I'm not a believer in great man theory. Let me start with that. And unfortunately, by the way, it tends to be always great man theory, exactly. Right? So I'm not a believer in that at all. I think great men have done probably more damage to the world than good. And whether it's because of the followers that they encouraged or whether it's because of the evil that they did themselves, I'm a skeptic when it comes to, that what you need is someone who's going to be very powerful and will play this transformative role and so on. If you're an organization like we are, which has 2,000 people, what matters is as many of those 2,000 people doing the right thing as possible. And the right thing might be things that give us the right performance. The right thing might be the right things ethically. The right things might be the way we treat each other. But you want as many people as possible to do the right thing. And that's what will make us a better organization. What I do in the organization is it matters to the extent that more people in the organization want to do the right thing and do the right thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I don't believe in, believe in, okay, this is the right thing and this is how you must go about it, this is what you must do.
Right. So, no, and which is why it's such an old theory, right? Yeah. It's the oldest theory.
Yeah.
And we've come a long way.
Yeah.
As a world, we've come a very long way
Yeah.
through the autocrats and the
Yeah.
LMX and leader-member exchange and all the problematic theories where people were supposed to flock around their leader and be sycophants, and all of that is gone and it's going, which is happy to hear.
Well, it's going, but we seem to have a world at present where there are too many self-styled great men attempting to lead it and causing lots of havoc in the process. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that, and it's not just men, right? It's generally what you said about self-styling and positioning.
But I think it's men. I mean, if I look around the world at present, I don't see too many women causing real damage to it.
Would you like to elaborate, or should we just leave it here and move on?
No, I mean, no. If I just look around, maybe that's a reflection of not having enough women in leadership. As leaders certainly of countries. But I thought the world was in a better place when we had people like Angela Merkel and Jacinda Ardern and others playing key roles of leading countries. okay. I mean, you can't take it too far. I mean, they used to say of Indira Gandhi that she was the only man in the cabinet, and I would see that as a very accurate and very good criticism of her.
Right. I think we are just coming
Yeah.
to the stereotypes, right? What
Yeah.
male leaders are supposed to do and what
Yeah.
female leaders are supposed to do and men to do.
Yeah.
In fact, coming from the other side, I would say that I think I would belong to a second generation of women leaders, not the first, because I think the pressure on the women leaders one generation before me so high to behave like men and behave like people they were not. If anything else, I mean, today if I try to behave like a man and I'm a leader, something is seriously wrong, really, because I should behave like myself. And coming back to the authenticity you're talking about. You mentioned gender, and which is the reason why we are talking about inclusion. So one of the best things about legislation in India has been the 1% mandate for women to be on the boards of companies. And even one step further is for us to actually go through those exams by the IOD Institute of Directors and go through the grind of being able to be on the board. It's not just enough to be a woman to be on a board. Despite that, we see so few, right? And one of the reasons, and this is a very real story. I'm going to say this with personal experience, because I was offered to be on a board some time back, a few years ago, on a particular board, and I said to somebody, I've just been for the interview, and that's happened. And that person, who is very much a leader, an excellent leader in industry, says, but they already have one woman.
So that.
What do I say to that?
I would ignore the person. I mean, it's look. You have many foolish comments, and I would categorize that comment in that way. There's a reason why I think we have so few women on boards. It reflects decades of discrimination and decades of inequality. And you can't set it right overnight, right? You need a flow of people who'll come through the system. So I'll tell you how we're trying to do it. I mean, in our own organization, I mean, I'm always somewhat ashamed of how few women we have in our leadership team and in our management team. We have very few. We have some, but we have very few. But you can't get that set right overnight. What we have now set right is that at least, the great bulk of our leadership team joined us as graduate trainee engineers. But they joined us as graduate trainee engineers, 25, 30 years ago. So what we have set right is that now half of all our graduate trainee engineers are women. And now for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been at that level. It's going to take a long time before it shows up in the leadership team and in the management team, but it will. As long as we sustain this over a long period of time, it will happen. We have to keep working at it, right? And keep ensuring that there is that atmosphere where people feel that it's only merit that determines success and progress in organizations, whether it's your own organization or whether it's a social organization or whatever. There are some institutions that do much better. I've been very involved with the Confederation of Indian Industry. And I've always been struck by how over the years, the Confederation of Indian Industry has seen women in leading positions, the heads of regions, not yet the Director General of the institution, but several at the next level. And for many, many, many years. And that goes back to the role that Tarun Das and now Chandrajit Banerjee have played in nurturing women as recruits into the organization, but then the way they've been nurtured over time, given more responsibilities, treated with complete equality, and have taken on positions of leadership within the institution. There are relatively few institutions like that you can look at and say, you have that proportion of women who play a part of running the institution.
Let's come to a few statistics, I wouldn't say with academic basis, but general observation. And like you rightly said, this is the world we see around us. So about 20 plus years ago, when I used to work at DataQuest as a journalist, we had done this survey among women in IT. And a very typical survey of women in IT where the percentage is very high, like you said, 50% plus in the beginning, then it's lower 5 years later, 10 years later, and now. And even if you do the same survey right now, it's not going to be greatly different across industries. Some industries obviously do better than the others, and there are reasons for that. But about 9 years ago, 8 to 9 years ago, when I was working as a CEO of a company, I'm very proud to tell you that when I ended my stint after 3 years, and even today somebody asked me, what are you proud of? I said, as a CEO, as a leader, we are meant to make money for the company. The profit and top line and bottom line is understood. That is your target. You're supposed to do it. It's not a matter of pride really if you do it right and you do it well, because it pays people's salaries, it does good things. What I'm immensely proud of is I left behind a leadership team of 13 people, 10 of them women. And, and I was asked, what are you doing? What are you feeding them? And is your policy different? And I said, no, we're just following the national policy. What everybody has in India and across the world is the same thing. We're just doing one thing differently. And that one thing is supporting people. And I don't mean just women, people in general, including the men in the team and everyone else at the right time in their lives.
When they need it.
When they need it. That's all.
And in the case of most people who are married and have families at a time when they have babies, and then you need to be able to deal with that and deal with it in an effective way.
Right. I mean, simple things like, and why I'm asking you this is because now I want to, tap the economist in you and the person who talks about the future really, is that can we look at work models or compensation models or models of work in general, where this whole debate of, I don't even want to go in the direction of the 70 hours and the 90 hours and, let's just park that. I don't even want to go there. But can we reward people for outcome and do it in a way where the best people rise to the top?
I think increasingly, and even over time actually, at the end of the day, at some point in one's career, it is outcomes that determine progress. At lower levels, you tend to want something that is more, structured and so on. So you may measure a few other things, but at the end of the day, it is outcomes. No, I think that determines, in any good organization, it's outcomes that determine
absolutely. I think a lot of leaders do believe that. But why I want to probe this a little further is that I think today a lot of leaders do believe that with work from home and remote. I mean, it has transformed lives. Remote working has transformed lives and industries, especially the sector we work in. The Elephant Connect and the Maya Care people we are talking about, everybody is disabled, everybody works from home and has worked from home. Why? Because they're equipped with the right technology, they've got the right laptops, routers, everything needed. But what's different and why we are so away from this remote work debate, because like the 70-hour debate, there's also a remote work debate. People have stopped working and it takes 20, what used to take 20 minutes now takes 2 hours to go to, and people can't do it. All of that is gone because people are allowed to not switch on their videos on calls. And with our organization, it's not allowed at all. You've got to be in the moment or you've got to be online, you have to be available, online.
I fully agree with that. You have to. I agree. It's a very important thing. You can be at certain you can have at certain programs or even meetings where you're not an active participant. You're there to kind of listen. Yes. It doesn't matter, right? But if you're part of a team that's supposed to decide something, I think you need to have your video on. You need to be
Yes, I mean, can we at least mandate
engaged.
that much?
Yeah.
Can we at least mandate that much to start with? Can we at least mandate saying, like we have a system now saying log in and logged out? If you're away, if you need to go and pick up a child, say I'm picking up the child, come back after announcing I'm back. But do it in an honest manner, in an authentic manner, right? Like you said in the beginning.
Correct.
And that's what's not happening. What's not happening, and it's leading to so much else.
And you need, and then you need to set the tone, right? So you need to make it easy for people to say that, right? And not that, oh, how can you say that you're going to be away for a bit?
Yes. And how can you say you have a child, right? And see, that's the other thing about corporate India, right? That why are we so embarrassed about admitting that we're human beings? That we could have an ill parent, or we could have, something going on. In our case, once again, because we work with two very different cohorts, so in our case, a lot of times, somebody could be going through back pain. There's somebody who's, they're wheelchair users, they have back pain. They actually would say it. They have said it, I'm here, my back is really hurting, but I'm in bed, I'm lying down, but I'm on the call. So that's the next level, really. And another, and because we work with a lot of disadvantaged students across India, they're actually embarrassed. There could be clothes hanging at the back, the background is not great. And we tell them, first thing, you want to blur it, you blur it. But if you don't blur it, we don't actually care. We're interested in you. We are not interested in your background.
Yeah, exactly.
But what can we as the world, as a corporate world, do to do this better? Because that's not happening. And that, these are tiny things holding people back.
I think it's how we behave. I mean, and I think if we behave in a manner that focuses on the essence, on the content, and not all these trappings of backdrops and so on, it's much better. So I think it's how we behave. Second, are we interested in the person as a person, as opposed to position or appearance or, trappings.
And as you said, give them that comfort of being the person they want to be.
Yeah.
Right? So let's come to Nayanta, your leadership development passion. I would say not just a project, but it's much more than a project. So do tell us more. And
sure. So as I've said in various forums, if people say, why did we embark on this project of starting a university? The purpose was very simple. I mean, we have the view that we need 100 great universities in the country. I would argue that we maybe have the beginnings of 5 or 6. Yeah, we have some great technical institutions, management institutions. Those institutions are largely in the public sector. They've done great service to the country, but they're not full-service universities. There are some good full-service universities in the public sector, but I think they all struggle at different levels. And I think some of the new private initiatives are the most promising for the long run, but they're still too few, so we need 100. Why do we need great universities? Because we need great talent. And we need great talent who come out of institutions with all disciplines represented. So we have these good IITs and IISc and IISers and so on that are great technical institutions. But we need great historians and great literature and great economists and so on to come out of our institutions too. And we probably did a better job with that 50, 60 years ago than we've done more recently, where technical fields have technical and professional fields, largely driven by the job market, have kind of skewed the education system in the direction of technical and professional education to the exclusion of the humanities and social sciences and a concern about development and so on. So I think in the long run, the best way for us to develop as a country is if we have the right talent that comes out of our institutions. And I think we're too big a country to rely on imported talent for our intellectuals. Our intellectuals should be significantly homegrown. And then we can season our intellectual group with some who are internationally educated too. But at the end of the day, the bulk of it should
come from here.
Be domestic.
So let's come to the youth for which we feel so positively about, really. I mean, what is the greatest hope for India? It's really the aspiration.
Yeah.
Right? The aspiration of the youth, which is aspiration, ambition, the raring to go, really. And so here we have two distinct sets of people. Privileged India, and I don't want to call it India and Bharat, but I want to say privileged India and disadvantaged India.
Yeah, I don't believe in the India-Bharat dichotomy. I don't think it's a dichotomy. Anyway, yeah.
Yes, so I'm glad to hear that, but
Yeah.
let's look at disadvantaged India. Disadvantaged in some form or the other, and there are enough levels and types of disadvantages we have in our country,
Yeah.
and there is the advantaged India. But if you look at young people from both cohorts, the one common thing could be the interest in the future, the interest in moving ahead, but they're approaching it very differently. So if you look at privileged India, they just want to go abroad. The main thing they want to do is go abroad, whatever the reasons for those can be. I mean, you studied abroad, we studied abroad. There are a lot of people who studied abroad, but there was a generation, I would say generations, who went abroad because they wanted to learn something in particular, which was available there to learn. Either came back or stayed on, but they went there to learn. While it's very scary to see that the reason for wanting to go abroad has very little to do with learning. And it's really, saying, so that's one part. And unfortunately, the second cohort is experiencing the same thing. That I want to go abroad. It's very shocking to see just the number of people who absolutely cannot afford to go abroad, wanting to go abroad, going abroad, being sort of conned by universities there and people taking loans. How do we stop this?
Oh, we first of all, we don't stop it.
Okay.
So because this is a reflection of individual aspiration and rights, and people should be free to pursue what they think is best for them, right? The way we reduce it is by competing with it. So we need to be able to offer people a better future at home than they perceive that they have by going overseas. So we don't stop it, and we don't do anything that would deter it. We address it by competing with it and doing a better job ourselves in terms of the opportunities that we create, both for people from more privileged backgrounds and for people from more disadvantaged backgrounds. It's also not a recent phenomenon, right? If anything, if you talk to, take a particular privileged group, IIT graduates, right? If you talk to IIT graduates of the 70s, they will tell you that overwhelmingly their classmates are overseas, right? They have more graduates, more classmates in the Bay Area than they have in all of India. True. Yeah, that's what you'll hear, right? That started to change post-1991, when, as a result of the reform program, the Indian economy started to create not just greater economic outcomes, thanks to the Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh reforms, not only greater outcomes in terms of growth rates and everything else, but greater opportunities for people in general. And we saw the first significant return flow of people beginning from the early 90s onwards. Let me say one more thing related to that. I think we became also a more open society in the 90s and 2000s. A more open society in terms of being more inclusive, looking at people for themselves, I think those were encouraging times when we were moving in the right direction of becoming more open and inclusive. And that supported people from more privileged backgrounds also wanting to say, I can come back. Now, what form did that more open society take? I'll give you a small example. If you lived in India in the up to the 1980s, you could not go abroad for a holiday. I think it was sometime in the 80s that they changed the rules, right? But for the 70s and the early 80s, you could only go abroad for a holiday once in, if I remember correctly, 3 years. Yeah?
Or not go at all. For a lot of people,
for a lot of
not
people,
go,
they didn't go at all,
yes.
right? But you had this, you were restricted from going abroad to doing so once in 3 years. I mean, you know, why have those kinds of restrictions?
Why have any kind
all?
of restriction like that at all?
So all that went away by the 90s, and that made us a more attractive place to live. You know, the kind of products that you could access. I mean, you know, you could say, listen, you know, we were building this great future for the country. I don't buy that. I think we started building a great future for the country sort of post the 91 reforms.
I think what you're saying is so interesting, because a lot of Gen Zs actually will not be able to identify with it.
No, because they didn't experience.
They didn't experience it. They didn't see the fact that there were only two cars in India. Even, you know, getting a slice of cheese was something. Oh, wow! There's some cheese here now, kind of thing. But that brings me to something very, very interesting you've said in the past about inclusion and how good inclusion actually is for business. I'd really love to hear more about this from you.
So let me give you the theory first. So the economist Gary Becker, who won the Nobel Prize in economics a long time ago, I mean 30 plus years ago, Gary Becker has a theory of discrimination. And one of the cases that he talked about was from the US, baseball teams in a particular league in the US, and this is in the 30s, and baseball teams were all white baseball teams. And then this one baseball team admitted its first black player. And the first reaction was that the other team said, we won't play with them, right? But then not only did they start playing with them, but the team won. And within 2 or 3 years, all the teams were inclusive, right? Simply because they produced better outcomes. And so Gary Becker's theory on discrimination is that you need to find a way to get that first mover that demonstrates that as a result of not discriminating, you recruit, whether it's sports teams or it's managers in a company, you recruit from a larger population set, and that then enables better performance. So for example, if we don't recruit managers from women in India, you're automatically halving your recruitment pool. If you then say, I will only recruit from a particular community, you reduce that pool further. If you then say, I will only recruit from my current geography, then you recruit it still further. So discrimination on any of these grounds, instead of on purely the grounds of who is best for the particular job, if you focus on that, you just get better talent. So at Nayantha, one of the things that we're trying to do in terms of our admissions process is we've tried to put together an inclusive admissions process. But the inclusive admissions process, and I think this is the important bit, is focused on getting the best quality talent, right? It's just that your definition of quality needs to truly be a good definition of quality. So for example, you can't compare, say, someone who's come from a very privileged background, had all the right infrastructure and support and dinner table conversations and everything else, who gets 98%, with someone from a very disadvantaged, first-time higher education going individual, who gets maybe 80%. And if you say, okay, I'll admit the 98% and not the 80, you may actually be missing out on higher quality talent. And then you need to look for other things. So we look for things like curiosity. Does the student display curiosity? We look for things like resilience. You know, were there something really challenging that happened in the child's life growing up, and how did they deal with that? We look for mastery. That has the child attempted to become really good at something? It could be a sport, a hobby, a musical instrument, dancing, whatever, right? So to try to demonstrate mastery. So you look for those kinds of qualitative aspects that might help the student stand out. And you're measuring then not just English communication skills, which is important, but it's just one
of the many
skill.
So what you said is so important and so good to hear that's happening in an educational institution. But you're also, part of a much larger business community. Leaders listen to you. Leaders from startups to very senior leaders.
I don't know if people listen to me.
No, they actually do listen to you. So what would you advise leaders who for years, for decades, have hired people like themselves?
Well, look, it's sort of like the whole sort of, you hire people like us, it's, you hire people who look like you. There is that element, right? And
homogeneity across, across.
So one of the things that we've always said is that you should look for competence and capability in the person that you're hiring, and it's also you should want to spend more time with the person, and the test of that is you should want to have dinner with the person, right? It's a sort of qualitative thing. Now you tend to be more comfortable having dinner with someone who's like you, right? Maybe. But it may be more interesting to have dinner with people who are less like you, because you may have conversations that you would otherwise
You might learn
not
something
have.
new about
and
the world.
You will learn as a result. So I think giving people some of that exposure and sort of saying, hey, experiment a bit, yeah? Have a conversation with someone who is not like you and see if you enjoy it. And you probably will enjoy some and you won't enjoy some, and that's fine.
So be it.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think encouraging people to focus on content, encouraging people to experiment, encouraging people to go beyond the look like me bit.
Think like me.
Is what we have to do.
Right. Let's come to something else, which was very, very interesting. Something you've said about leading real people.
Yeah.
Right. So, if you'd like to explain that concept and how important that really is.
So this is actually from many years ago. One of my advisors at college and a real mentor for me throughout his life was a person named Jim Adams. And Jim Adams and I, he was a professor at Stanford, and he and I talked for years about co-teaching a course that we never actually did. But we knew what we wanted to call the course. It was going to be a course on management, and it was going to be called Managing Real People. And the implication was that most of what business schools, for example, teach when they teach management is they teach people, let's say, certainly Stanford Business School would teach people how to manage Stanford students. And we were sort of conveying that Stanford students weren't real people, right? Because they were
outliers.
They privileged backgrounds, self-motivated, wanting to get ahead in life, etc., etc. And we said that, listen, for many people in a company, even really good companies, the job is a part of their life. It is not their life. Yeah? And so you have to manage people on the basis that some people will be, hey, listen, really driven, and I'm going to make this company go places, and I really want to achieve a lot. And you have other people who will want to do a really good job, but they have other things in their life that they wish to also do. And you have to respect both. And I think good organizations make space for people who do a really good job and want to switch off at a particular time and have the weekends to themselves, and people who are really driven and want to really do the maximum that they possibly can. So, and people should be able to have different career paths. And yes, the person who's really driven will probably progress more than the other, but the other should be equally respected, even if they don't progress as fast.
I think that is such valuable advice, because what you just spoke about was respect for diverse opinions.
Yeah.
Right? And not the obsession.
And different ambitions,
yes,
self-ambitions. We should respect that.
Absolutely,
Yeah?
Absolutely. So this is the last
and
question.
By the way, one of the things that we encourage people is that, when people turn, when people reach retirement age, we actually have many people continue with us beyond retirement age, and especially
in some role or the other.
Yes, and especially they move out of a direct line role, but in more in more sort of mentoring roles and so on. And the one thing we will say to them is that, listen, make the time for the things that you really want to do outside of work now. That should be one of the objectives. Which it's advice that I don't adequately follow myself.
I was just going to ask you that. Is there anything you make time for yourself?
So I make some time for myself. I wish I had more. So I really enjoy reading. I really enjoy listening to music. I do both of those less than I would like to. I enjoy traveling very much. I travel a lot. I've tried with some success in the last few years to not do these 1 or 2 day trips where you go a long distance and just for the purpose that you're going for, but then take an extra couple of days and enjoy the city that one is going to, or friends who live in the city that you're going to. So I'm getting better in that direction. Lots of scope to do much more.
Right. Last question. You have a dream for India. We all have a dream for India. But your dream for India is very, very important, because as an economist, as somebody who I would say has always had their focus on the future of India, I don't know a time when you haven't spoken about the focus for India. First thing, what is the dream for India? And the second is, what can we leaders, when I say we leaders, right from startups to experienced leaders, small and large companies, and students, both, do to get there? Because of course, you're welcome to tell us what the policymakers should do, but I have very little control on that. But what can we do to get there?
So I've always been a deep believer in India's potential and India's long-run potential. And one of my greatest frustrations has always been when I see us sometimes doing things that divert us from achieving and delivering on that potential, and that can take the diversions can take the form of a wrong policy, but it can take the form of completely wasteful energy spent on things. For example, one of my views is that when you have no achievement to show, you change the name of the city or the state.
Do some kind of tick box something, notional, just to say that notional. You did something.
Yeah. But I would think that it's much healthier if you actually focus your energy on things that matter and make life better for the larger population of the country or the state, as opposed to this tokenism of changing names. The bit that, where does our potential come from? It comes from our aspiration. It comes from the population that we have, which I've always believed is a huge asset. It's also a population that is inadequately educated. Now, especially earlier in quantity terms, now in quality terms, I think we've addressed the quantity of certainly school education, but in quality terms, we have a really long way to go. And I do not think it receives enough attention at either the union or the state government level. What the national education policy says is exactly right, but I don't see enough happening to implement what it says on the ground in terms of improving the quality of school outcomes. That it has very clear what's and how's, teaching at the right level and so on, but I just don't see adequate progress, and I do not see adequate salience being given to it by even our education ministers at the union and state levels. I wish we would hear from them what that dream is, what are the things that they were chasing, what are the things that we need to do, and so on. So that's one piece, but that's a piece that we need to address from a policy perspective, more implementation than anything else, but also from what we do as companies in terms of our CSR work. We should be focused on teaching at the right level as a very sensible outcome that we should chase in our CSR work with schools and so on. Yeah? Second, having said this about policy, I'm a deep believer in India's potential. I'm not a deep believer in the necessity for the Indian government to be the most terrific government in the world, right? It would be nice, but I don't think our progress should depend on having perfect state and union government. We should start with the government that we have. And we should expect a limited number of reforms, as we had in 1991, in particular areas, which free up the economy so that Indian enterprise and Indians can thrive and can do more and achieve more and are rewarded for doing more and achieving more. So I think that's what the role of reform should be. It should be enabling that. It should not be schemes and programs. It should be enabling and freeing different sectors. We saw this with manufacturing to a large extent in 1991. We have left untouched most of the social sectors. Education is crying out for reform so that we enable. Healthcare is crying out for reform so that we enable to a greater extent. These are sectors that I think really need attention to get the state to do less and enable Indians to do more.
Excellent, excellent. Very last question, just one piece of advice in a single line for any Indian, absolutely any citizen of India.
Well, belief in our future and to watch actual trends in the country and not get confused by and diverted by the noise. We're a very noisy country.
Yes.
Yeah?
And a lot of diversions, like you said.
Yeah,
instead of the focus, they were always going somewhere else.
So we should distinguish between noise and trends. Yeah? And some stuff you have to just dismiss and say, yeah, I know so-and-so said that. I know it's an outlandish comment. I know it's terrible and they shouldn't have said it. Just forget it and ignore it, right? If it's a trend that is worrying, address the trend that's worrying. But otherwise, just go by trends and not noise. And if you have that belief in the long term and in the future, also have the resilience to know that the path is not smooth. It's not, I don't know. I'm not a fan of China and the Chinese government's approach and so on. However impressed I am with their economic and technological achievements. Yeah, I suspect that the path is much less smooth in progress if you're internal to the Chinese system than what you see from the outside. But from the outside, it looks all very systematic and logical, and we plan X and achieve X and so on. That's not India. Yeah? Our path and our progress will be somewhat noisier and bumpier and so on. But we should be, I think, greatly comforted by the fact that it's been a nice upward path, certainly since 1991. And I think that that confidence that things will continue to be, the direction is right. We'll keep improving. We'll keep getting better at what we do. We'll keep achieving more. We'll keep getting more and more people will keep getting more prosperous. We have to worry about things like education to ensure more and more people are included in our progress. But by and large, things are getting better. And we have decades to run of things getting better. And so we should have that confidence in the future.
Absolutely. So this is in a nutshell what Dr. Naushad Forbes has told us is for the future, keep India's focus on the future. Don't be confused by what he calls noise and look at the trends, change the trends if you need to change the trends, but don't be confused by the noise and keep moving ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Manjiri. Thank you very much.